Welcome back to Fast Market on the TD Ameritrade Network. I'm Tom White, joined by my co-host Kevin Hinks. Let's bring in our next guest for our cash tag segment, and that's going to be Megan Brantley, the Vice President of Research at LikeFolio.com. Thanks for joining us, Megan.
Thanks for having me. It's good to see you, Kevin.
Hi,
Megan.
Yeah. So we got Microsoft. We're talking Microsoft. I know this is different from maybe a lot of the consumer-centric type of stocks that you guys usually covered. Shares are getting hammered from all-time highs, down about 18% from those all-time highs that we just saw in November, near $350 a share. But what kind of data are you guys seeing? I know a lot of the focus has been on the Activision Blizzard takeover deal. I mean, that stock's under $80. I think the buyout price is like $95. What kind of data are you guys seeing at LikeFolio ahead of earnings?
Yeah, so whenever we look at Microsoft, there are so many different segments for this company that we could touch on. You could talk about their cloud segment. You could talk about the document management offerings that they have. You could talk about remote work and Microsoft Teams. You could talk about Windows. And unsurprisingly, though, our data, most consumers are most excited to talk about their gaming segment. So things like Xbox and the different games that they provide. And so this is kind of something to keep in mind whenever we're looking at our data, to understand that, this is really consumer facing. So our data is going to lend itself more to this consumer facing side of this business. But I think it makes sense because we really see this segment growing. When we look at Microsoft as a whole, we actually saw a little bit of waning over the last year comparatively, just because 2020 was such a huge year for just the digitization of work and even play. And now we're starting to see this shift. So whenever you look at this chart, these are purchase intent mentions. So mentions from consumers that are engaging with some type of Microsoft product, whether it be the gaming, whether it be, document management, whether it be tablets, things like that. And what you can see is that really through October of last year, that's a pretty much a downward trend. And now you're starting to see this reversal, and we're starting to see some progress. We've got traction building on a quarter-over-quarter basis. We just saw them cap off a pretty nice holiday season. A lot of that was driven by the success of their gaming console by the Xbox. But in general, it's nice to see this kind of reversion. On this year-over-year chart, I think that pace is -2% on this chart. But whenever I looked at it today, updated, it's exactly flat. So it's continuing that improvement. So because of that, we are lending a little bit more positive on Microsoft, because we like to see that kind of reversal in that downtrend.
Yeah, Megan, this is a company doing pretty incredible things, especially I see some of your charts here on Activision Blizzard. And yeah. Activision Blizzard looks like it's one of the more popular of the gaming stocks in terms of consumer happiness, in terms of purchase intents. It also looks like this may be their gateway into the Metaverse, which may help them evolve as a company. I think with some of the problems at Activision Blizzard that have been well documented in the past, I think they may be getting it at a reasonable price, not overpaying for it. The price tag, they say $75 billion, but it's really $68.7 because they have cash on hand that lowers the net price. But do you see, or does your data see, this purchase of Activision Blizzard and it's, it bringing it into the Microsoft family or its portfolio of products? You see this as just an extension of them making their universe bigger. This is their biggest purchase it's 3 times what they paid for LinkedIn. So this is not a small purchase. So clearly they've got a big bet here in Activision Blizzard. Are you seeing any data based on that, other than some of your data right here that says this is one of the more popular names?
Yeah, so I think that you make some really good points. The first being that this is the largest acquisition that Microsoft has made, at least that since we've been tracking that I'm aware of. So this is a big deal. Yeah. This is not a joke, right? This is something that they're taking very, very seriously, that they see potential future growth in big time. And so I think that it looks good whenever you look at Activision Blizzard, its placement on that chart, that this is one of the top performing companies in that niche. And so they have a huge portfolio of games on a lot of different types of devices. You've got your Call of Duty, then you've also got your Candy Crush on your mobile phone. So I think that Microsoft is really playing the long game here and realizing that they can kind of get consumers on board on a lot of different in a lot of different ways, whether it's their phone or whether it's through Xbox. And in the long term, the metaverse, that's one of the biggest trends on our radar. Whenever we look at this trend on a year-over-year growth perspective of consumers talking about this concept of the metaverse, it's almost exponential in growth. I can't even read off the percentage. I don't even know how you would phrase that. However, this is one of those things where it's hard for, I think, investors and a lot of people to wrap their minds around what is the metaverse, because it seems like this abstract concept to us right now. But this is a move that I think Microsoft realizes that, okay, this actually, this is probably going to be a thing. This is where things are trending. This is where people are talking about, this usage of virtual reality, and this kind of gaming segment is a first natural step into the testing out of these metaverse waters. And then in the meantime, at least in the near term, Activision is a best of breed. So this is one of those things that even while they start to feel this out and kind of get their presence in the metaverse established, they have this large arsenal of games that are performing very well versus peers. So this is, again, could be applied to they have a Game Pass system. You can see where this naturally kind of boosts involvement and creates subscription revenue for an already growing segment, at least according to our data. Whenever we look at those Microsoft Game Pass mentions, we have those up about 32% year over year. So I think that this is a move. It signals that Microsoft realizes and is making a big bet on gaming, and probably because it is a huge driver right now of their growth.
Yeah, and if you look at some of that, the data that you guys have on the metaverse, I know it's just come to fruition over the last 6 months as far as mentions out there, especially when Facebook's changes their name to Meta, right? But if you look at the application process of the metaverse, you mentioned that the first inroad or first to market is going to be the gaming sector and how it's driving that. But if you look at the metaverse and what people actually have for it, it seems like nobody has anything yet. So gaming will be first in, but is this applicable, or do you guys have any data that says, hey, we're seeing it mentioned in maybe not consumer companies, but maybe the tech industry in a way that it's going to help maybe their efficiencies and some of their manufacturing or some of their software applications? Is that where you're seeing a lot of the talk, or is it all based on, the gaming side?
I think, there are a lot of different practical applications. It's a lot of consumers who are having these exact same conversations that we're having right now of, how can this, what can the metaverse touch? I think it can touch a lot of different sectors. But in addition, I think one area that we haven't talked about is Microsoft's cloud segment, which is really driving growth into the future. One of the things that we looked at right before I came on was, what does Microsoft's cloud mentions, what do those Azure's mentions look like compared to AWS, for example? And from a volume perspective, AWS still dominates, but on a growth perspective, we actually start to see Microsoft Azure showing signs of taking some market share. We see those mentions up on a year-over-year basis, where we're starting to see some normalization in AWS and actually a slowdown in that growth. So I think that that's another positive note that is informing a little bit more of a positive lean for us in Microsoft.
Yeah, and some of your data, Megan, has shown some weakness as far as mentions on that first chart, and the stock price has finally started to roll over the last several weeks. Yeah. What kind of earnings score do you guys have going in for Microsoft into this report?
So our score heading into this report is a 39. I will say, take that with a grain of salt in the sense that we are very focused on this consumer-facing segment. So you guys will have to suss out what you think the non-consumer-facing segment kind of looks like, and I'm interested to hear what you think about that. But for us, we do like this company long-term. We like where their head's at, and we like that the data is starting to show signs of that positive shift. So I would say that we're cautiously bullish, but curious how you guys are going to play this in today's market.
Yeah, we've got some strategies set up for some examples here. All right, Megan, great stuff. As always, that's Megan Brantley. She is the Vice President of Research at LikeFolio, joining us with the data on Microsoft had earnings.